Welcome to the Alignment Show, featuring conversations with folks who have taken steps to identify their highest values and align their lives around them. Time on this earth is not unlimited, and you may be seeking to make sure you spend your time on things that matter to you. These conversations will encourage you and support you in doing so. Now, let's meet this week's guest on the Alignment Show. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome once again to the Alignment Show. My name is Don King. I am your host, and it is my pleasure to bring guests to you to help you to live your values, to value your life. Hope you enjoy these conversations. As we're getting started today, I want to tell you about a couple of our sponsors. One of them, as is often the case, is my own books. You can go to donking.com. That's DONNKING.com/books to see them all. We're going to keep the intro kind of short today for a couple of reasons. I'll talk about that later. But if you go to that site, you can see all the books that we have out there. And we'll have a crawl going for those of you who are watching on the video from time to time that will help remind you of that. Also, sales wise, we talk about Bob Berg and Jeff West, Kim Angeli, what they do for people, as you see on the screen. If you're on video, real relationships, not manipulation. This is one of the reasons I really want to support what they do in their sales wise training. There's a stereotype of selling about taking advantage of people. Absolutely, that is not what's going on here. Bob has had a successful career, as has Jeff and Kim, in following what we call the go-giver principles, seeking genuinely to serve. And so it's sort of like what Ben Franklin used to say, you can do well by doing good. So that's coming up again in April. They just finished one at the end of January. They are doing them virtually now, so that saves you on in terms of travel time, travel hassle. Don't have to worry about making the plane connections. Don't have to worry about what goes on with TSA. Sounds fantastic to me, and so I would recommend that you check it out. No obligation. You're not going to get pressured into signing up for anything. We're hearing from people who have taken it as it being not just changing their business, but life changing. So check out SalesWise. And so those are our sponsors for this week's show on the Alignment Show. My guest today, I'm going to tell you, we recorded this a long time ago. There's been a lot that's happened in the King household since we recorded this. So I think it was back in October. I'll come back in the outro and talk a little bit about updates and that sort of thing. But I want to tell you a little bit about Tracy Rees. She is somebody that I've known for some time, as I mentioned in the interview. She and I taught together. She's still teaching at the college where I taught for 34 years. And she's always impressed me. And the reason she's coming on the show today is that she is at the start of her next chapter. Now, she's not leaving the college, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to talk with her. So often here on the Alignment Show, we talk with people who took the leap, whatever that leap is, sometime back. And so they can kind of look back on what's going on. She is at the start of her next chapter. And so we're going to be talking with her about how does she take the chance, take the steps out of the comfort zone. And by the way, how did she turn it into a yes and instead of a jump? We're in a situation, I say we, you'll hear why I'm saying that in the interview, that it wasn't a matter of choosing the side hustle or the main job, that kind of thing, or just jumping right from one to the other. She is still in process. For instance, Her website is a summer project, not finished quite yet. So we've got a pointer to how to get in touch with her right now. It will change when she's got her website ready, but there's a lesson there for all of us. You don't have to have it all done or even figured out in order to start. So again, we'll do more updates as we come out of the interview. But for now, I just want to get you connected to Tracy Rees, and I think you will benefit from this conversation. So let's go ahead and bring on Tracy. So, as I just told you, we're glad to have Tracy Rees on us today. Tracy and I, as I probably said in the recording, because I'm not quite sure what I'm going to say for the intro, we go back a ways at our college together, and she is somebody that I have known to be oriented towards really being helpful to people. Imagine that, and a college teacher. And so she is with us today to talk about her transition, so to speak. And when we say transition these days, we can mean a lot of things. What we're talking about is not you leaving college. And correct me if that's wrong.
No, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, so you're still going to be in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that you're doing as another way of fulfilling your values, it seems to me. So let's jump right into it and say, what is it that leads you to take on even more work than you're already doing? You probably question yourself with that from time to time. Now, what has led you to set up this, what will we call it? And I know the name of it is going to be Authentic Pathways, or it is Authentic Pathways. Why? What's led you to take on a mission?
Yeah, I mean, if we go way back to the beginning, when I was getting out of grad school, I had never planned on teaching. And so I had planned to go into higher education, but from a student affairs side. And I wanted to help students. And I remember writing my comps and having to answer that question of what am I going to do with my degree in educational psychology? And I said, I want to be a coach. And I was like, I want to be a life coach. And that was kind of just starting to come out on the surface. Nobody had, it was a new thing. It was more corporate based. And I fell into teaching at the college. And so my career took a very different path from the get-go. And for a while, I was fulfilled. I fell in love with teaching. I knew I liked helping students, but I was doing another role in addition to teaching. So out of the classroom, I was what was called a student success coordinator. And it was kind of like, if you remember that program, it was almost like a social work for the campus that I was at. And so I found myself working more one-on-one with students regularly, more than you can do as an instructor and in the classroom. And I felt so fulfilled. And maybe a year or so before COVID hit, the program was dissolved for cost. And it left just a gaping hole because while I still love teaching, I wasn't getting, you can only meet with so many students one-on-one, and the culture's changed. Students don't always want to go to their instructor. They can just go online. And so I found myself just really just like missing something in my life. And the more higher education and the landscape of higher education has changed, and the more other stuff that gets added to professors' plates, the more I realized I wasn't even teaching as much as I had wanted. And I just felt like empty, if that makes sense. And so it went back to that way back, when I graduated in 2009, like, hey, coaching. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. And I thought about going back to get my licensure for therapy and toying with that so I could do more one-on-one work. But that's really just not where my soul, where I felt that I was needed. You know what I mean? I kind of just took a step back and said, what is my calling? I know that sounds cliche, maybe even a little corny, but what's my path? What am I meant to do? And I've worked with my own therapist, and I kind of essentially came back to this, no, I can do this. I can jump out and get past the fear and work with people on a one-on-one basis to really fulfill really what I've wanted to do all along. Now I can't quit my day job, and I don't want to right now. I love teaching still, and I need the insurance. But that's the big
I relate. Yeah.
But something was missing. And and this is me saying I'm putting myself first. In as much as I want to help others, like I need to kind of walk the walk. And this was my essentially, let's jump off the cliff and see if this will work.
Okay, well, let me probe a few things here. First of
Yeah.
all, I want to go back to the you said something about you fell into teaching. You didn't just accidentally wake up one day and they've got you stuck at the front of the classroom. So how did that aspect of it come about?
So,
or like a GTA kind of thing?
So no, I was actually, I graduated where I was graduating in 2009, the summer, and I needed a job. And two wonderful women from the college came, and I had classes with them, and they were working. It was one of those classes that it was like master's and PhD combined.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, "Hey, do you have a job yet?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Well, we have an opening in the advising center." And I said, "That's perfect. You know, that's kind of the area that I wanted to start in. It's working with people, working with students one-on-one." And so they brought me over and I started doing advising. And you've known me, like this, it's just, that's my gift. Like if, you know, we all have different talents, we all have different things. Like working with people is just what I'm good with. It's just what I'm good at. And so I was in the advising center, and it was 2009 where we had record enrollment that fall. And I was just quite literally right before the semester approached and said, "Hey, do you have your, like these degrees? Like, can you teach?" Because they were so short staffed on adjuncts. And
yeah, because of the growth. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
And so I started teaching that college success when it was a 3 credit hour class that kind of dealt with study skills, motivation, career exploration, kind of the same things that I would be coaching. And I jumped right into 5 courses. So I was the first semester there, I was like temporary term, or like, you know what I mean, for the semester full time.
Temporary full time, yeah.
And it, I mean, I quite literally, I mean, they just pushed me off the boat right into the deep end.
I can only imagine. And so in that first week, you're probably in panic mode a little bit. But yeah. How soon did you find, okay, I really like this?
Well, I mean, I almost quit the first semester because I had never had classroom management experience. Like I had, you know, I had really, I worked good with people and I knew the content and I knew the stuff, but teaching is a whole different ball game. And I remember I was teaching at several campuses. I was at the Hardin Valley, the Magnolia, the Division Street campus, and it was different groups of students. And I had one class in particular that they just weren't receiving what I was giving, and they didn't want to, and they were just shut down. And I was like, I can't do this. Like, this isn't for me. Like, this is too hard. Like, they don't even want to be here. And I almost was like, this is it. I'm going to have to find something else. And just something changed, you know, like over the course of the semester, when you get that, where the light bulb starts to click, you know, and they start really understanding, like, wow, okay. And really, when you start breathing potential like into them that they already have, but they hadn't seen it, they start learning, and then they start buying in, and then you start then growing in confidence, and it just stuck. And so I had from the get-go like 4 classes as an adjunct every semester, 4 to 5.
Okay. Now, and for folks listening, you know, this is not primarily an education show, so give a couple of quick bits of context. A lot of folks assume that teaching college is just like teaching high school or whatever. It's more like you are the resource for the students. You are working with adults. They have trouble figuring that out sometimes, you know, because they're used to something where they're required to be there by state law. So there are a lot of differences between teaching college and teaching high school. So what a lot of folks don't realize, even if you're aiming to be a college teacher, you don't get classes in classroom management. I think I had 1 class, you know, and so a lot of it is figuring out for lack of a better term, the human aspect of it, you know, how to connect with people, in a lot of ways revive the natural human love of learning that can get beaten out of you in, let's just say, in a required environment. So, you know, we're not going to spend time digging too much into that, but I think it's worthwhile for our listeners who aren't in the field to recognize that it's not unusual for people with master's degrees or maybe doctorates that weren't classroom oriented to find themselves in a classroom. So, so give that context there.
Yeah.
But then you found yourself, you may have seen me light up a little bit when you said that about the light bulb. I mean, that was the thing that kept me going for 40 years. Just when the light bulb goes on in the class, somebody finds themselves connecting with what you are helping them with. That's almost addictive.
Yeah.
And so I'm bringing that out because now, as you were talking later on in your experience, when did you move into the classroom full time instead of doing the advising stuff?
Yeah, so I started in 2009 doing the college success, but I was because of the degree that I have, it was educational psychology, and with the state system, it required just plain psychology or some of those prefixed, and so I was 6 hours short of that. So I had to go back in 2011 and take 6 hours. And so I did that. And then in 2012, I started.
And let me pause you there again for a technicality.
Yeah.
Folks, in order to teach college, not necessarily university, because universities a lot of times are going to require a doctorate, but that's their determination. Okay, the minimum to be able to teach college at a college level is a master's degree in something. And 18 hours in the discipline. So when Tracy's talking about needing to go back to school to get a couple more classes, in your educational psychology master's degree, you had, I'm not great with math, but I think that means 12 hours that had the psych prefix. So you just needed a couple more to be able to teach in the discipline.
Yes. And I did that.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I thought we need to have that context.
Yeah. And the reason I did that was really job security, because there's, having a specific, especially psychology is a STEM field. A lot of people don't realize that. It just was greater job security for me. And I was like, oh, for 2 classes. Okay. And so I went back and I started teaching that in both subjects, college success, which is more of like a college 101, freshman 101, and then the psychology classes. And then in 2015, I was brought on officially full time. So no more term, because for several times I was the full time temporary, but I was brought on tenure track, which means I can promote and continue progressing in the field in 2015.
Okay, very good. So that gives us a good timeline there. And so, again, a lot of folks will be surprised that when you go to full time, you can actually, in a way, wind up teaching less. It's not that you have fewer classes, but that your workload will consist more of committee work and that sort of thing. So is that what you're talking about when you were saying that you weren't able to connect as much in the classroom?
Yeah, and it was, I was doing both. So I was doing the student success kind of like social work-esque position and teaching. And so I was able to kind of work more than a traditional instructor because I was still getting that piece, but it was almost like that was extra. But when that program dissolved and I was just straight full-time tenure track, that piece got ripped away. And I almost had an identity crisis. I went through a lot of like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Like, there was a period where I almost walked away from higher education because I'm like, this isn't fulfilling. Like, what am I doing? And so that was really monumental in this, where I'm at now is that was kind of the start. I think that was like 2019 where it something in the back of my mind said, you're not aligning with your values anymore. Like, you're still doing something you love, but you're not aligning with your values.
And we can, again, I'll throw it out there because of the industry. A lot of times people outside of higher education will think of community colleges somehow being not as valuable as university.
Or
when
rigorous.
You turn it around to those of us who are the suppliers, so to speak. Years ago when I was starting on my career, I was aiming for a 4-year university, and I had a wise advisor who said, you're good at research, you could do this, but your heart's not in it. Your heart is in working with students. If you're working at a 4-year state university, the focus is going to be on doing research.
teaching students is almost, it's just what you have to do. And we're really going to have graduate teaching assistants do most of that.
Yeah.
So in looking at your path as it became, in going through the community college, you had more opportunity to actually teach.
Mm-hmm.
Students get more actual contact with college level faculty that way. But having said that, within the context of what we're talking about here, you began to feel like that you weren't quite connecting with the values. Let me explore a little side path here. I did something similar. And again, for folks who don't know me, I taught public speaking and communication studies. So rather than it being that I had a main job and then I was doing something on the side and trying to hide it from my primary employer and all that sort of thing, the college considered what I was doing to be professional development because I was out doing professional speaking. I was coaching people in communication studies. Are you finding that as you develop your coaching practice, that it's making you better in the classroom, and because of your work in the classroom, it's making you better in your coaching practice? Am I asking too much of a leading question here?
Maybe, but yes. And I'm still very new in this leap. And so, but yes, setting it up, for example, there's a lot of resistance in higher education in a lot of areas with AI technology. And I found it absolutely vital to use at a starting point. So I was able to explore AI and using it as a tool, not as like a crutch, in setting up this business and helping me time manage a little bit more effectively. And so I've been able to take that and help myself in the classroom as we tackle this new kind of landscape of artificial intelligence in the classroom. So it's kind of forced my hand to not just take a stance because that's what research says or that's what some other people have said, but to actually explore it. But also just the psychology content, it's kept me more up to date. I've done more reading that maybe, yes, I've chosen because I want to do, because I use it I'm going to use it for my coaching, but still aligns with especially the discipline I teach in psychology. So it's keeping me abridged and up to date scholarship wise. And I will use that on my self-evaluations and
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It also occurs to me, when you were doing your master's work, you weren't aiming at college teaching, but you found yourself in college teaching. You probably didn't take business classes either. No. And now you're finding yourself starting a business, independent consultancy. It's not like a corporation, but still there's a lot of business aspects to it. So this is a little broader question. Yeah. When you were teaching, how did you go about figuring out the teaching part? How did you self-educate? And how are you self-educating now as far as the business stuff that you have to do in order to serve clients?
Yeah, the teaching and the content is easy. That stuff I already have a huge background with. It's the business stuff, the technology stuff that I don't know. And so even just setting up the logo and setting up like the marketing. I did have a business minor. I was one class shy of a business minor, but that was 25 years ago. And so a lot has changed. And so now it's all online. And that just wasn't the world that I was in. And so I actually reached out and I'm a huge advocate of not having to go it alone when there's vast resources. Like we live in little mini teams. And so I reached out to my neighbor who's a graphic designer and I said, hey, I need help. This is what I want to do. Would you be able to help me? And so he created the logo for me. And I reached out to some other friends and some other acquaintances to help with setting up like intake forms and help setting up, liability information and pricing, like price points. Like I was like, well, what would I charge? I don't want to do corporate coaching or, the coaching that I do is such a niche. And so relying on other people and other experts has been vital, because just because I'm doing this on my own doesn't mean I have to do it on my own.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, and for folks who are on with us video, a lot of our audience is audio only, and so we'll make sure that they know how to get in contact with you. But for those on the screen, we showed the logo a little bit through the QR code here for Authentic Pathways Coaching and Consulting. And so figuring out that aspect of it, and we are, I'm going to change what we've got on the screen here. Where's the button, Don? There it is. Okay, you can find Tracy by going to donking.com. That's Don with a double N, DONNKING.com/Tracy. And I hope I've spelled the name right, TRACY. And the reason that you're doing that, folks, excuse me, is because she is actually literally setting up her website right now. She's got one out there. The URL might change. And so we have set up a short link to make sure, even if you see this recording 3 years from when we're recording it, that you will still be able to find Tracy and see how things have evolved. So that's one of the great things about talking with you right now, Tracy. A lot of times folks will come on and they've been in business for 20 years or whatever. You are literally in the process right now. And so you've got a real clear sense of what you want to do, what you're going to be offering to people. You have actually taken the steps. And listeners, I know a lot of you have been thinking about it for a while. I'm not trying to push you to do it. But in a very real way, what we're exploring with Tracy is, how do you actually make that leap? Take the chance. Now, one of the things I'm going to point out here is that Tracy has very wisely not quit her job in order to do all this full time, 100%. Got to pay the bills out of this month. So in the coaching that you will be, well, that you are doing, because you're doing it now. What kind of coaching are you doing, or do you want to focus on? You made the comment that it was a very niche, or as we say in the South, sometimes niche kind of area. So what will you be working with people on?
I mean, it's literally what the name implies, authentic pathways. And so one of the, I think the greatest values is shared experiences. You know, I'm not the only one that had a little identity crisis and a career crisis with what am I doing and what path should I be on, and how do I stay true to my values. And that's actually a very common thing, especially in this day and age. And so helping people figure out what they value, what direction they want to go in their future. You know, it's not therapy. You know, coaching is very distinct from therapy. So I am not licensed, and I cannot and will not give someone therapy. But coaching is guidance. And it's helping the person find their true pathway, whether that be in their career, whether that be in their relationships, but so that they can identify the path they should walk moving forward with their life. So it's kind of like the people who want to realign, like maybe some of the listeners, you know, if they're scared and there's a lot of fear with taking this leap, and should I do it, and what's going to happen? And there's a lot of unanswered questions, and you kind of have to jump into the unknown, but again, you don't have to do it by yourself.
Absolutely. And it actually occurred to me as you were talking, and then you went the same place there. For whatever reason, folks, I decided sometime back that I did not want to do coaching. Got nothing against it. It's just not where my heart lies. I am a writer and a speaker. And so when people come to me and say, I like this idea of aligning with your values, can I get some coaching? My response is no, at least not from me. But what I'm going to be doing now is saying, I do know somebody who works in that area and is very much attuned towards this idea of aligning with your values. So this is one of those synchronicity things, Tracy. We're going to be sending people your way, I hope.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, folks, those of you listening, those of you watching on the screen, donking.com/Tracy is just a convenient way to make sure that you can connect with her as she continues to develop. So, we are starting to run short of time, Tracy. So one of the things I like to do in wrapping up an interview is to say, there's probably something that you wish that I had asked that I didn't. What would that be? And what would your answer to that be?
Well, I guess probably just the style of coaching. You know, there's the topic or the niche, but there's also each coach or each, person has their own style. I am a true humanist, which means that I believe in a person's free will and their potential. And so anybody who's ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like that's my camp. And so the way I approach this is very much as a guide, like helping someone self-discover, but then the whole goal is reaching their full potential. Like how can they get to where they want to go? And it will be in a very humanistic way, a very humble way, very patient. There might be times I have to push a little just to kind of make maybe more directive for people who are more resistant and who might need a little bit of a push, but it would be much more, I'm just here to be your guide rails. And that person is there to discover.
Let me explore that just a little deeper. I have talked with students and clients over the years who sometimes are very clear on what they don't want. Do you find that sometimes the challenge is helping someone figure out what they truly want as opposed to what they think society wants them to do, or that sort of thing?
Yeah, and there's a lot of social pressure, and a lot. One of the classes that I teach often is social psychology. So there's a lot of biases, and there's a lot of reasons and kind of chaos that get in the way of someone. You know, we do things because we should have, could have, would have kind of thing, and we want to prevent that. But it's really coming down to isolating confidence and who that person is and building that within them, and that does take time. So this isn't something where you can come and 1 or 2 sessions and you're off running. This is something that will take an investment depending on how far along the person is.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, Tracy, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk with our audience here, because I know there's a lot of them out there who are wrestling with the very thing that you are working with right now. This is fortuitous. Appreciate you being on here. And I'm going to turn it over to my other recorded self to close things out. But once again, thanks for being here with us this week on The Alignment Show.
Thanks for having me.
And that was a great conversation with Tracy. I am not the other recorded self, by the way. I'm live. When we were recording this, I thought I was going to go to an all recorded format. It just hadn't worked out that way, which is fine. Kind of illustrates a lot of what we're talking about on this show often, and that is that our ability to adapt to what's happening is more important than carrying out exactly what you plan to do. So a little update on Tracy. As I mentioned, this recording is a few months old at this point. She is still working on her website, so that short link that I shared with you is still pointing to her LinkedIn presence, but she is working with clients. The website will be a summer project. She had some surgery in between there, and so again, one of the advantages about the yes and aspect of this, that she's not just doing a side hustle that could potentially be viewed by the employer as a conflict of interest. They support each other. It gives her the ability to go at the pace that she chooses. And I think that's a great insight for anybody who's out there exploring. Explore your values, but it doesn't have to be a black or white, either or, settle or jump kind of thing. It's an ongoing process. And Tracy illustrates that very well. So I appreciate this opportunity to talk with her about what's going on with her. Stay in touch. Keep an eye on what's happening with what Tracy is doing with her coaching. And as I said in the interview, I'll be referring people to her. I think she's a perfect example of becoming aware of your values and then taking steps to bring your life into alignment with those. So as we talked with Tracy, obviously, this is at the beginning of this chapter of her life. I think next week, and I always have to say, I think, those of you who are regular listeners, you might be aware that it's been a couple of weeks since we had an episode. I got sick last week. I'm having to exercise some flexibility myself. But if things go as we plan, then next week we will have somebody who's been doing the same thing in a sense, always advancing, though always staying ahead of the curve. Lois Kramer has been coaching professional speakers for over 30 years, have to do the math on it to figure it out. But she is, you may have never heard her name, Lois Kramer, but she has coached people like Jack Canfield to help with their speaker marketing. Such a font of wisdom, and she's updated the book that is sort of the Bible of speaker marketing. So we're going to talk with her about her process, how she evaluates her values, how she's constantly thinking, is this what I want to be doing? How she made those leaps some years back. So I don't want to say she's at the end of her career, far from it, but she's in a different place than Tracy is. And all of these conversations, I hope, will support us in determining what matters most to us. And so I don't know what day that'll be next week, but if you will make sure that you stay subscribed to confidencecultivators.com, you can get the show notes there. I'm going to put it on the screen again for those of you on video, and for those of you who are with us on audio, confidencecultivators.com. That's where those show notes will come in. And so we will see you next time, whenever that is, right here on The Alignment Show.
That's it for this week's episode of The Alignment Show. What has it inspired you to do in your own life? Whatever it is, take action now and take the first step. It will help you to talk with a friend about what you're thinking. Share confidencecultivators.com to spread the goodness. And remember to live your values and value your life. We will see you next week on The Alignment Show.